do you feel her presence now? I mean, do you like catch a scent of her perfume or feel when you feel that she's around you? How is she making her presence known?
That's a really interesting question as well. We have Shayna sends incredible signs, just amazing signs and synchronicities. We could do a whole another interview about the signs and synchronicities that she sends. But as I interview people for my podcast, sometimes we'll get jealous about other people's signs. It's like, well, I never saw an apparition of her, or I never felt her put her hand on my shoulder or anything like that. But I think that we get what we need. I think our loved ones give us what we need. And I was talking to someone on my podcast, and she got these incredible signs from her husband that after he had passed, he was sending her WhatsApps on her phone. And she said they had stopped. And I said, well, how do you feel about that? And she goes, well, I really feel his presence all the time now. I feel him like if I'm driving in the car. I feel like he sometimes takes over when I'm driving in the car. And so what that led me to believe is like, I think sometimes our loved ones like, we don't need the signs anymore. Just talk to me. Just talk to me like I'm there. Some people say it helps for them to speak their names out loud. I don't usually speak to Shane out loud. I do in the morning. When I look at the picture, I say good morning to her. Usually, though, I just communicate with her, in my mind. We can learn when they come to us because they come to us in different ways. So some people might feel a tickle on their head or a touch on their shoulder or, a tingle or something. Another lesson I learned, and it was from Suzanne Giesman. She called one day and she said, Shayna has a message for you guys and for my wife. And so Suzanne always gives evidence. So she gave some evidence about that was Shayna in contact with her. And she said, Shayna says you have a question for her. And my wife said, well, I don't think so. And Shayna says you do. So my wife realized that as she was meditating with her eyes closed, she would start to see the color purple. And her heart would start just to speed up ever so slightly. And she said, is that Shayna? And Shayna confirmed that was her feeling her presence. So my wife now knows when she's in meditation and she feels that, that's Shayna's way of saying that I'm around. So I say to people, find out what it is, how your loved one communicates with you, because it's all unique. And it's going to be depending on you. It's going to be dependent on them. She sends me a lot of things through electronics. She does crazy things with my phone and my computer and stuff like that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I so appreciate that. Now, you mentioned that your wife, she didn't necessarily recognize it until Suzanne came along and said, your daughter has a message for you, and she wasn't seeing it as a message. So for people who are watching this, what are the clues that they can watch for that maybe this isn't just something I should blow off and ignore? Maybe this is something trying to come through. What should they watch for?
Well, you can be intentional about it. So there's a couple things you can do. One thing is I'm a big believer in meditation. So go into meditation or just sitting quietly, close your eyes and think about your loved one and ask them, give me a sign, give me a feeling, and then pay attention to your body. What do you feel? Again, do you feel a tingle in your head? Do you feel a touch on your shoulder? Do you feel a rumble, a little tickling in your chest, something like that? It's probably going to be subtle. So we can learn to actually enhance that communication. The other thing, again, they speak to us, and I don't know why, but the language on the other side seems to be more symbolic than linguistics. They speak to us through signs and symbols. So learn about signs, about numbers. I see the number 1111 all the time, for example. After Shayna passed, I said one of the signs, and this was really wild because she passed just about 2 months after she passed. And I said, I want you to give me dimes, not pennies. When I find a dime, I'll think about you. And I remember the first time I found a dime, it was in August. It was about 2 months after she passed. I was having a really rough day. It was the first time the three of us had gone on vacation without her. It was a little mini weekend getaway. And I was getting into the shuttle to take us to the ferry. And my wife and my other daughter get in the car, in the shuttle in front of me, and they got in the middle seat or the front seat. I got in the seat behind them. As I ducked my head to get in, after I'd said to Shane, I need a sign from you today, there was a single dime under the seat that I happened to see there. And so I took that as a sign that Shane was like, okay, I'm going to be with you today. And it made the day more bearable.
Right. Again, thank you for sharing that. It's so lovely to hear these kinds of stories. Now, I mentioned earlier that you were a certified grief educator, but you're also a mental fitness trainer. How does mental fitness fit into dealing with grief?
Well, the thing is, when we can know these concepts in our head, and then we have mental fitness. We talk about saboteurs. So we always have these internal saboteurs that are sending us messages that aren't helpful. So it's learning to identify when the saboteurs are speaking to us, rather than we call it in mental fitness, we call it our sage, but I would call it your higher self. That part of you that knows, that part of you is still connected to the other side. So it's a matter of again reframing, and we will know, but we'll slip back into those lies. So mental fitness helps us to recognize when the saboteurs are speaking to us, to recognize what the truth is, and to be able to make that shift to the sage perspective. So, for example, when you get to when you start saying, "Okay, I'm never going to see them again," you recognize, okay, well, first of all, that's terrible language, because what never means never, and you may not see them again physically while you're in your body, but you will see them again. And will it be a long time? We don't know how long it's going to be, and time is relative. But we don't know that. But we'll tell ourselves, you're going to suffer for the rest of your life, and we think the rest of our life is, again, we use the word forever. So it's becoming aware of. I'm very cautious about the language I use, even when I'm speaking with myself internally, and it's about being able to make that shift. And mental fitness helps us develop the muscle to catch when we're having the wrong mindset, and being able to make the shift to the proper mindset.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you mentioned something that brought this to mind, where I'll never see them again. You almost have to share the same belief system that we're talking about today, that there is an afterlife. So for people who believe that this is it, we die, we're done, we're worm food, that's the end of it, nothing happens after this. Is it possible, if that's your belief system, to ever really recover from grief? Have you worked with people who have that mindset?
I have not, and I believe that's because I'm pretty upfront about what it is I believe. It's interesting, because me being a member of Helping Parents Heal, we say at the beginning of every meeting, we're not dogmatic. You don't have to believe anything to be a member of Helping Parents Heal, which is absolutely true. The thing, if you are a member of Helping Parents Heal, you're probably not going to hold on to that materialistic paradigm very long, or you're going to probably leave the group, because in early grief counseling, and even, I guess, a lot of grief counseling today, they don't talk about continuing bonds. Freud talked about basically get over it, move on, accept the fact that that person's gone. Um, and I'm not going to say that people can't heal from that. I don't know. It wouldn't work for me. I think people that hold that believe that I have to believe. I don't know why anybody would want to believe that. They believe they have to. And I tell people, there's a lot of evidence for what I believe. It's not just a matter of wishful thinking. It's not just a matter of what I believe. She's a very good friend now, and she challenged me. She said, show me some evidence. So first of all, I sent her to an incredible medium, and she gave the medium a fake name, a fake credit card number, and everything. And the medium just blew her away. And they became very good friends to this day. And then I started sending her evidence. I'd like, read books by Bruce Grayson, read books by PMH Atwater, read books by Penny Sartori, Gary Schwartz. I started just naming Julie Beischel, start naming all these research scientists who have studied the afterlife. And she came back to me, she said, why didn't I know any of this existed? And I said, that's the thing. It does exist. There are people that have studied this, people they're research mediums who have been tested, and under scientific conditions. So, yeah, if you want to hold on to that materialistic paradigm, I certainly can't stop you. I probably, frankly, wouldn't have much to say to you in terms of your grief recovery, because mine is all based on the fact that I have a continuing relationship with my daughter. And that's what I know. That's what my experience has been. Now, I'm happy to work with people who aren't there yet, who say, I'm a skeptic, like my friend. Her name is Kim. She wouldn't mind me saying her name. Kim was a skeptic. There's cynics who say, I'm never going to believe it. No matter what evidence you show me. I sent people to look at research on near-death experiences, and they came back to our mediumship even. Well, there's no such thing. So why would I look at that? Well, that's a cynic, and that's not somebody I can work with. But a skeptic is someone who says, I'm not convinced yet, but I'm willing to look at the evidence. Well, we can work with that.
Yeah. Okay. So then, big picture, looking back on your life, if you had a do-over, if you could change your past, your life story, would you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I say that I have no regrets about my life, and I try to avoid absolutes. But when I look back at my life now, I think about things that I thought were tragedies at the time, like when I got divorced when I was in my early mid 20s, or when I got fired from my job when my daughter was 9 months old, or anything that's happened in my life. And I can look back now, and I can always find something good that came out of it. So the biggest tragedy of my life, of course, is my daughter passing. And if I could take that back, and we've talked about this all the time and helping parents heal. It's like, would I take it back? And I'm at the point now where I'd say, I don't think I would. And there's a great, I love movies. It's not a great movie. It's a terrible movie, but it has a really good message called The Butterfly Effect. And in The Butterfly Effect, they go back and they keep trying to change the past. And every time he changes the past, there's an unintended consequence. So we tend to say, if I change the past and Shayna lived, we would be happy and healthy and everything. And Shayna would be 23 and she would have her job. But Shayna had terrible rheumatoid arthritis, and she was on some very powerful drugs. I know people that have rheumatoid arthritis, and I know that some of them are not doing very well. Now, Shayna's was under control. But I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if Shayna would have become a drug addict. I don't know what would have happened if Shayna had been here. We imagine this perfect life if our loved one hadn't passed. And I try to avoid doing that. And what I try to focus on is, what's the lesson for me now? And if I can keep that perspective that I'm going to see her again, and that everything that's happening is happening for me rather than to me, and I get curious about that, no matter what it is, no, I wouldn't change the past. Yeah, there are times I'm like, I would love to have Shayna here. Sometimes we're all together, and I'm like, wouldn't it be great if Shayna was with us right now? Of course, it would be great. But I wouldn't be talking to you if Shayna weren't here. I don't know what I would be doing. I certainly wouldn't be on the path that I'm on. I wouldn't be touching the people that I touch to help them with this message. So I wouldn't have that. That's something I do know, and I think that we deemed it worth it when we made this agreement. Going back to the agreement, that it was going to be worth this for the temporary separation for the growth that we're both going to get out of it.
Right, right. And the help that you offer to other people. I think this would be a good time to mention your website. It's grief2growth.com. And that's a number 2, grief2growth.com.
Right.
What will people find if they visit you there?
Well, what they'll find out more about who I am, how I work with people. I do work with people one-on-one and do grief coaching. I also teach positive intelligence or mental fitness to people. I'm actually in the process of redoing my website, so I'm going to have a resource page there soon. You'll find a link to my podcast. I have, I think, about 250 episodes now, podcasts and YouTubes. I've interviewed probably 50 or 60 people that have had near-death experiences. That's one of the things that, it's free to everybody. I find it so inspirational talking to people that have had NDEs. I learned so much about reality by interviewing those people. But I talk to other people. I talk to parents who have lost children, people that have overcome all kinds of tragedies, mediums, people that had near death. I've already mentioned near death experiences. So there's that there as well. So I try to offer as much as I can for free, but I also do work with people if they want to work with me one-on-one.
Right. Perfect. Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us today, Brian. This has been a really interesting, touching conversation. And thank you to your daughter for being part of this. Before we go, is there anything that we've left out that you want to make sure that we talk about, or do you feel like we've covered it all?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I just want to end by saying to people that again, if you're a skeptic, that's fine. Examine the evidence. I'm a big believer in examining the evidence and coming to your own conclusions, but also to trust your intuition. That's one of my lessons for this life, and that's something I'm learning in my later years, is learning to trust my intuition. So if your heart is telling you something, check it out, but then trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Wow. Well, thank you again, Brian. This really has been lovely. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.